Welcome to the fourth episode of the College of DuPage Entrepreneurship Club. My name is Dr. Peter James, and you are here on the College of DuPage Zoom line. I was going to say not on their campus, on their Zoom line, of course. And I'm just thankful for you guys all to be here today. College of DuPage is, of course, one of the largest two-year colleges in the United States, located here in Glen Ellen, Illinois. And our goal, of course, is to expose students and local community members to entrepreneurs and small business owners all over the world. By them sharing their story, we'll show how entrepreneurship is definitely an option when your education is complete. And again, we are usually on campus, but today we are coming to you live on Zoom. And we are not just locally in Chicago area. Our special guest today is coming to you direct from Colorado. Good stuff, good stuff. So let's dive on into the conversation today. Daleele, great to have you with us.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me today, Peter. Glad to be here.
Good stuff. So first of all, tell us how the weather is in Colorado. I know most of us in Chicago would probably rather be in Colorado, but share that with us a little bit if you could.
Beautiful. At least I get to see the sunshine, which is more important than anything. The temperature's pretty cold. There's no snow. It's supposed to snow today, but no snow. But the weather, it's sunny. So that's all we can ask for.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, thank you so much for joining us, first of all, and I appreciate you being able to share your expertise with some of our students who are listening now, but also for some of those who watch later on as well. Daleele, we've known each other for a little while, almost a year now, I guess. Going on a year. Good stuff. And we met through networks, right?
Yep. I think you were introduced to me through someone in my professional network as well, too. And was like, hey, you have to meet Peter. So.
And I think that's so important because the networking game, especially in entrepreneurship, a business startup, is so important. And I appreciate the invitation, the referral, and the connection with you for sure. So it's very, very good stuff. So give us a little background about maybe start off where you're from originally and how you got to do what you're doing.
Yeah, perfect. So originally born and raised in Raleigh, North Carolina is where I come from. Went to school on the coast, so UNC Wilmington, right along the beach, which I do miss.
Right.
And then I always say it's important, but I'm first generation American. So my parents are originally, they migrated to the US from Ethiopia. So that's in East Africa is where they come from. And yeah, so my story is I essentially just went to school for business. I went specifically for information technology, which is a role that sits right in between the business users who actually use technology and the developers who actually build the technology that they're going to use. And my main, I guess, role has always been as the liaison of going to the business and saying, hey, what are your challenges? What issues are you having? And then figuring out a way we can use technology to help solve those challenges. And today in my role, so my company is Rooks DM. That's what we do essentially is, I was talking about this yesterday, we're in the business of saving time is how I would put it, where we go into companies, primarily small businesses in the professional service realm. We go in, we look at kind of their processes, how they're operating, where the inefficiencies are, and then we figure out how we can save them time by implementing the right technologies throughout their organization. So when they save time, they can use that time to do more productive things, which is most importantly serve their clients at the end of the day. And then also it impacts their top line, which is making more money. So if we can free up time, they can inherently make more revenue at the end of the day.
Good stuff. You mentioned that while you were in college, you were studying information technology, IT overall. I'm always fascinated because usually most people don't wind up doing what they did from college, their college days. It sounds like you stuck very closely to that. How did that unfold from college to even continuing to dabble in that?
Yeah, so I want to say like lucky with my degree. I always know I wanted to do business. And when I went to my college website at the time, I don't know, young kid, right, trying to figure things out and what I want to do. I almost went the marketing route, but I decided to do IT because I just figured, hey, IT is computers. And as a kid, I enjoyed like tinkering with computers. And back in the day, they had CD burners where you were like burning CDs or DVDs and stuff. So I tinkered with that and I chose IT. And then post college, I guess I did an internship in college. So highly recommend to do internships if those are
Right.
available. And if the college can help orchestrate or make introductions, those are very valuable as well
Mhm.
too. But I was exposed during that internship to what it would be like if I was working in the field of IT. So that was a true like hands-on experience outside of the classroom of what it would be like in the day-to-day life of an IT professional, and I enjoyed it. So I did my internship for 3 months during my in between junior and senior year in the
Mhm.
summer, and that's where I got hands-on exposure working for GE Healthcare out in
Yeah.
Milwaukee,
Yeah.
the Milwaukee area. And through that, I kind of realized like, hey, this is fun. It's a corporate environment, and then
Yeah.
being able to like look at technology and how the business can use it to help them do things better was eye-opening to me.
Yeah, the only reason I laughed so hard, when I was leaving the military, one of the companies that I interviewed with, that like did like 5 interviews with, was GE Healthcare out in Waukesha, right?
Yep.
And
Well, yep.
I think I was on the cusp of going, except it was in Wisconsin. I'm like, oh, it's cold up here, man. So I decided to go to the pharmaceutical route instead. But I was really intrigued and saw myself being a part of their company. But when I had other offers, I was like, oh, I think I'm gonna go in another direction as well. So did you ever land in GE Healthcare?
So not after that, no. So I did the internship,
Mhm.
and then I went back to finish my senior year. And in my senior year, I was given another opportunity.
Nice.
So actually, I ended up landing at Fidelity Investments post
Ah.
college,
Mhm.
which was a great company to work with as well too. And through that, I think I had a good transition from college into the real world, even more so because
Yeah.
there's these larger companies have like a new college hire training program,
Yeah.
and Fidelity at the time had a 6 months training program for new college hires. So it was a good transition period because it was kind of like hand holding, but they
Sure.
developed this program that allowed you to transition from college into the real world and give you not only the educational experience from a classroom setting standpoint of how your role would work in the organization, but also they put you on like a project that was you and working with like stakeholders and kind of trying to solve a real business problem. So that was fun, and that was like a good transition from college into the real world with Fidelity.
Yeah. Talk about that a little bit. That transition from to Fidelity, even to how where you are right now. What did that look like? How long did you stay, and why did you even make the transition into doing your own thing for that matter as well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think as I get
And
older,
and I'll interrupt you. It's a good question because students don't always see how that transpires, and it never transpires in a smooth line. There's always
yeah,
like, well, this happened and this happened,
yep, yep.
right?
That's a very true.
Right,
Um,
right,
I
right.
I think it goes back to my personality. So I'm very open-minded and curious to try new things. So I think that has pros and cons too at the same
Hmm.
time, but I'm always open to new opportunities or new ideas, and I don't kind of rule things out. And so I think that's how like my career has transitioned where it has today, because I've always been open-minded. And like you even mentioned it, right? The first time I got my call from GE Healthcare, I
Yeah.
never heard of Wauwatosa or
Well, that's
Waukesha.
whatever it was, right?
Yeah, and they sent me this offer, and I looked at it. I said, "Never heard of it. I'll go and try it out." Right? Like, what do I have to lose? It seemed like a good idea, and I think just having that from the get go has gotten me to be where I am today. But my transition, yeah. So I started with Fidelity at first in their IT department, and then from there, I was doing some IT work, and I think I stayed there a little bit over a year and a half.
Mhm.
And the reason for that was because another opportunity had presented itself actually outside of the tech space. So my brother actually owns a construction company,
Yeah.
and at the time he was just looking for someone he can trust to kind of manage his production department.
Mm.
And it was a role that I had never done before, nor was I ever into the construction industry. But to
Sure.
me, it was kind of once again the open mindedness of saying, "Hey, I can come in, I could potentially help family, I can learn something new, gain some valuable skills, move to a new location,
Yeah.
and try something that I haven't tried before." So I ended up doing that
Mhm.
a year and a half. So I was at Fidelity a year and a half, and then after the year and a half, I went to go work for my brother for almost about a little bit over a year and a half as well
Sure.
too. And in that time at the construction company, learned quite a bit, and that's actually where I got like hands-on experience of working with small businesses and seeing the impact
Nice.
that technology can have on their business if it's implemented. And that to me was valuable.
Yeah.
Um, but yep. And
So
then
it,
Sorry,
So
go
it
ahead.
truly did evolve, I guess, to a certain extent. It really was not a straight line. It was really like an evolution to how you got to where you are, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So I went from Fidelity to construction company, and then I did that for a little while. I committed a year. I said, "Hey, I'll come in, do this for a year, and then after
Mm,
that, I want to go back into technology." I
yeah.
almost stayed. It was over a year and a half, and then from there, I transitioned back into technology. So I did some consulting work for a while at Hitachi Consulting,
Hmm.
and then I transitioned into another role as a business process analyst with a company called Spring CM, and that was a role that I really liked actually. And going through those transitions, it was interesting because I actually did find a role that I really enjoyed. But in that enjoyment, I was always doing what I'm doing now, which is Rooks. So I started Rooks back in 2014. It was always kind of like a hobby. So like nights and weekends, I would do it. I would work on different projects. I would work with small business owners. So I was doing that for a number of years until I
Okay.
was able to grow it to a point to where it was getting more business, it was getting more momentum, and it was requiring more time. So I had to make a decision at that point to say, hey, I can continue working full time, or I can quit my full time job and try my business and go all in with it full time, which is what I have done over the last coming up over 2 years now.
Wow. Talk about that experience. Obviously stepping out on a limb a little bit, number one, but then two, actually doing it, which can be a little bit daunting overall. So how has that transition, and now 2 years in, how has that, tell us about that experience?
Yeah, so at first it's definitely a big transition, and I think for that is when you have a job, you have people essentially that you look up to, or they're kind of telling you what to do to a certain degree. So
Yep.
there's like structure, there's conformity, there's things that you're expected to do, and there's a lot of accountability.
Yeah.
When you own your own business, that becomes a little harder
Yeah.
because you have to hold your own self accountable, and then ultimately, like you have the decision to make at the end of the day of, hey, should I be working on this, that, or the other?
Yeah.
So I think that transition was the biggest hurdle to kind of take on and say, hey, I'm ultimately responsible for making these decisions. I could make multiple, like one situation could have multiple answers. And so I
Yeah.
have to decide what the right answer is for that situation, which can sometimes be a challenge in itself, especially if you're not exposed to it, right? If it's my
Yeah.
first time in an experience where don't really have experience, I'm making an educated decision based off of my gut feeling, based off some of the information I have, and based off just talking to other people to see what they would do in my circumstance. So I think that was the biggest transition. And then I would say the second transition is the time. So in traditional corporate America, usually you go in, you work 8 to 5, 9 to 5.
Yeah.
You clock in, you come in the morning, take a lunch, and then you go home, right? And then that's that. The transition with business is you're kind of almost working, especially in the startup phase. And if you're trying to grow it, there's so much you have to learn, right? From accounting to finance
Yeah.
to HR to bookkeeping to development to new technology to customer service. There's always things that are happening.
Yeah.
So I think that in itself is a huge transition because you have to know a lot of everything, but almost nothing, right?
Yeah.
Because you can only go so deep because you're trying to cover everything. So you have to pick the lanes that you really want to go deep on.
Hmm.
And then you have to understand, hey, this is a specific lane. Like maybe HR might not know everything, so I can't really go deep here. So I need to make quick decisions. And if I don't have those decisions to be able to make them, then I need to hire or talk to
Yeah.
people that can help me make those quicker.
Outsource or something like that as well, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Hey, those of you who are joining us, thank you so much for being with us today. If you have any questions for Daleele and his journey, please don't hesitate to type it in the chat. I'll be more than happy to read it to him, or even ask it to him for that matter as well. I don't want to hog all the questions overall. I do have questions, but I don't want to take them all from you all, especially if you have questions around business ownership or just him in general. So so how difficult is it as far as generating money? And here's what's behind this question a little bit, because as a business owner myself, the challenges seem like there's more and more administrative stuff to do that you were just mentioning a little while, whether it is the HR, the marketing, sales, whatever the case may be, and it takes up way more time than what I really want to be doing, my bread and
Hmm.
butter. And how has that been for you, especially from the, trying to generate revenue and all that kind of stuff? Tell us about that underneath side of the business ownership thing.
Yeah, so that's a good question as well too. So
I know
there is a
it's a
challenge.
loaded question. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. There's a challenge too, and one reason. So my company is bootstrapped, which
Yep.
essentially just means like we don't have any outside investors like me and my business. So I do have a business partner. So we're just investing our time and money into this business to help it grow, and it's more focused on like organic growth. So that limits our resources and what we can use money for and what we can purchase,
Yep.
first and foremost. I think in the earlier stages when when revenue isn't like the highest and you're still trying to like figure out what it is you want to do and kind of who your target audience is,
Yeah.
that can be challenging because then you're doing a lot of the things yourself first, for two reasons. You're quote unquote trying to save for money, even though you are losing time. But because you don't have the resources to pay for it, you have to put in the time. And then secondly, you don't know what you need, is the big challenge there. So you kind of have to go through that process and try it
Yeah.
yourself to figure out, okay, now that I've gone through it, I know I need to hire this person to help me with kind of putting together my operating procedures, or this person to help me with bookkeeping.
Hmm.
But you might not have those processes set up initially. So you don't really know who to hire there, I think is what makes it more challenging.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that's been the biggest challenge. And I think the balance thing too is because ultimately where you want to spend most of your time is what's making you money. And usually for us specifically, it's client work. So anytime
Right.
I'm spending time talking to clients, working with them, then that's how we're generating money. And that's if they're already in the door, but there's a lot of work that needs to happen before we even sign a deal. And that's secondly where I spend, if not all my time, is business development,
Yeah.
professional development, like networking with people and trying to get new business in the door, but also like once we have those businesses in, just growing the relationships with the people that we do have currently.
Yeah. Good stuff. You mentioned target market earlier. Who are you? Who is your target or your niche audience that you're going after?
Yeah, so we're going after small businesses in the professional services area. So
Okay.
like if you're like a healthcare provider, if you have like a clinic office, law offices, financial service firms, those are the people that we're targeting right now because our whole model is to save them time and make them more efficient. And those services are usually provided, to customers that want to purchase them. And
Sure.
the more efficient they can be, the more customers they can help at the end of the day and focus their energy on just serving the client versus trying to do the back end admin stuff and trying to figure things out from a technology standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. Do you spend time or not? I would say even before COVID, before the pandemic, were you finding yourself spending time where your target market hung out at? Especially you mentioned doctors, physicians, those professional services, lawyers. Were you going to where they were to a certain extent?
So if I could be honest, initially we weren't, right, because I've been doing this 2 years full time.
Yep.
When I came on board full time first, our company had a little bit different of a vision than it had now, and we were kind of going down a different path.
Mm-hmm.
And it was when I was able to dedicate my time full time to this that I was able to kind of pick things apart and realize, hey, this is the trajectory we want to go down.
Sure.
So we've been focused on this market since the beginning. Late last year is when we started to make this pivot, is what it's known as, and that's where we really doubled down and said, hey, what are we good at, who can we serve, what's the most value we can bring to the table.
Yeah.
And we kind of determined that after kind of doing our due diligence internally to figure out, hey, this is the right market we want to be targeting.
Yeah, good stuff. This is like a caveat question in light of what's going on around us. How has COVID-19, the pandemic, affected your business? Now, it sounds like most of your stuff's already remote, your IT, so you can do most of your stuff from a remote location. But how has the pandemic affected your business?
Yeah, so operationally, we haven't had any impact. Like
Yeah,
you said, we've always done Zoom meetings way before they've become this popular.
sure.
We've worked with clients we've never met in person at all. Everything has been remote. The biggest thing that's been impacted is the business development side of things. I do majority of the business
Yeah,
development, and I'm a face-to-face type person. So me and you, Peter, we've sat down,
yep,
we've gotten some food before and hung out, right, and just chatted to build those professional relationships. I
sure.
think that's been the biggest hurdle,
Yeah,
and figuring out how do you get in front of people to continue to build relationships, even though it's not face to face. So now you're in the virtual world and trying to do that.
yeah,
Um, and with that said, I think all the work that I did prior to COVID of like the face to face meetings, the networking, the one on one, the coffees, the lunches and stuff are now starting to like even provide more value because I've already built that relationship. So now if I do hop on a call with someone virtually, the rapport is already there. It's already been established, and it makes the conversation a lot easier than versus having to meet them for the first time virtually.
Yeah. Um, Again, folks, to those of you who are here with us today, please don't hesitate. If you got a question for Daleele, throw it in the chat. I'll make sure we'll ask it of him. Students are oftentimes hesitant about networking. They hear that word, they're like, oh, I'm awkward at it. Actually, I was just talking to another student this week. Yeah, I'm not a good networker. Break that down from your perspective, especially maybe even as it lines up with your business. What does that look like for you? And is it so daunting as people make it out to be?
No, but I'm biased because I have a natural tendency to I have a curiosity to want to learn more about people.
Right.
And so I don't ever view it as a negative thing or something that I dread doing. I actually, because of COVID, I can't do it as much. And that has actually, it's not good for me because I get energized through having those interactions with people.
Yeah, yeah,
So I think it's a little bit hard for me. Um, to say networking is daunting or anything like that. But I
sure.
also think it's a skill that I've learned over time because I do remember being in college and going to a job fair before, which is I would consider under the networking category because
Mhm.
you're trying to meet people to be able to potentially get an internship. And I remember shaking. Like I was at the job fair, it was overwhelming because
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like, who do you walk up to? What do you say? How do you approach them? There's so many factors that go into it. But I think if you just do a little bit due diligence ahead of time, so if you are going to like a job fair, or if you are going to ask someone for something, just think about how the situation will evolve. So, hey, I'm going to this job fair. Maybe just have a handful of people that you want to talk to, maybe two or three, and say, hey, I just want to target these people. And I
right.
have specific questions that I want to talk to them about. Maybe you don't talk to everyone. So I would probably advise of like starting small and building up courage. And it's almost like going to the gym. The more you do it, the easier it becomes and the
Yeah,
natural it becomes. And then it doesn't become daunting, right? To me, it's almost second nature now. I don't even think about it anymore.
good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, it's something that's definitely has to be practiced, and you have to dive into it as opposed to be scared of it. No one's gonna bite your hand. No one's gonna bite you in the face.
Yeah.
They're just gonna be like, hey, everybody wants to have a conversation. Most everybody wants to have a conversation. So if that's one of you individuals who are watching that falls in that category, I was hesitant about the networking thing. You just got to dive in. It's like the diving board of the swimming pool. Everyone's in the pool and you're thinking it's too cold. You just got to get in
Yep.
and just got to jump in. And that's what it is for sure as
Yeah.
well.
And it's also too like
Mhm.
the way to look at it too is like you don't have anything to lose by
Yep.
networking with people. You only have things to gain.
Yep.
And so do they by networking with you. So it's a two-way streak. So I think if you kind of have that mindset of, hey, let me just go into it. I don't really have much to lose.
Hmm.
And that kind of helps alleviate some of the fear, I think, at the end of the day as well,
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. I agree with you wholeheartedly from that perspective. Um, a personal habit that contributes to your success. What do you think that is?
Yeah. So I think it's asking a few things. So one is the networking component, I think is a huge one because I ask people questions that I'm looking to get answers to a lot of times.
Hmm.
So if I
Hmm.
don't know things, I'll essentially like crowdsource it, right? And like just talk to people and ask them questions like, hey, I'm looking to draft up this contract. Have you done it before? Can you send me some
Hmm.
examples? Can you point me in the right direction? Or if it's a specific like technology that I'm looking to learn more about, I might reach out to the actual company and saying like, hey, could you give me a demo? Could we chat about it? Just kind of asking people for help when I don't know the answers to things.
Yeah.
And I think that stems from the networking side of things of being able to know who to ask those questions to.
Yeah.
So I think that's been a big one for the success of kind of my company and me as a person.
Yeah, that benefits you in a number of different ways, definitely from the networking perspective. But now you have resources that are in your network that can help your business, maybe save you some time, save you some money as well. And that's also the value of having a professional network to be able to lend you their expertise to a certain extent, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
And people are always willing to help out if you just ask, but they don't know, right? Is the thing. So if I don't come and say, hey, Peter, I'm really struggling with hiring people. Do you know anyone in the project management field that you could
Yeah.
refer to me, or where I can look? Then you might point me in the right direction. And you, by simply just pointing me in the right direction, could cause me to solve all my problems. But if I never asked, I wouldn't be able to solve it, right? Or I might be like just banging my head against the wall because I didn't make the action to ask someone for help.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. I just got a couple more questions. Hey, folks, just want to make sure I'm not hogging all the questions. So if you have a question, it's okay. Please don't hesitate to type it in the chat. This is a good opportunity to do so. I don't want you guys to keep hearing my voice because I am a boring guy. Daleele, man. Here's an interview question for you, right? What's your vision? 5, 10 years from now, where do you envision your organization being? What level? Who you working with? Things like that. What was your vision for the company?
Yeah, so just continuing to help small businesses, I think, will always be the core of our business because
Mm,
we can see the value that it adds and it's very high impact. So I think to us, we just appreciate helping people.
yeah,
And how we do it is through the use of technology and getting them set up with the right technologies. So in the next 5 years, I would love Rooks to work with multiple small businesses across the country, if not globally, to be able to get them to work more efficiently, get more time back in their day,
mm,
and ultimately be able to be successful because of the technology that we've implemented.
sure.
And I think even more long term than that is just continuing to build a company that builds a team that enjoys coming to work, working with each other, and that is making a positive impact in society at the end of the day would probably be the bigger vision of what I see.
To piggyback on that question, do you see yourself having like the $100 million company?
That would be nice. I wouldn't be opposed to it. um, yeah, that would be nice. Yeah, that would be nice.
And the reason I asked that question, someone asked me that a while back, and actually, I think it was I think they asked me what my goal and dream was. I said, "Hey, I want $1 billion company," but what comes along with being $1 billion company,
Yeah,
right? You lose your time is not yours anymore.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I was like, "Yeah, no, I don't think I want. I don't think I want all that." So yeah, I had to rethink that whole process there and the business growth thing to a certain extent as well.
Yeah. And that's interesting too, because like I mentioned, like I have a business partner, so that
Yeah,
kind of helps with kind of shaping the
sure.
vision. And like we both have to agree upon where we're taking the company.
Hmm.
And sometimes we have differences, right? Like no one's perfect, so we
Yeah,
have
yeah.
differences, but chatting about them and where we ultimately want to end up is a big thing. But I think for us, like, it goes back to what I mentioned earlier. I'm big into like not ruling things out potentially.
Right, right.
So
Yeah, good stuff. So last question I got for you there, Daleele. It's been a pleasure having you with us today and sharing your insights and your journey. So if you were college age all over again, knowing then what you know now, what would you do different? What would you have done a little bit different?
yeah, that's a good question. Multiple things I think.
Sure.
Um, First and foremost, I would probably be a little bit more courageous in trying new things within a corporate setting, I think.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I'm a little bit reserved, and I think owning my own business has forced me to not do that.
Yeah.
So just getting up there and asking questions, even if it's someone that's more in like a senior position than you are, even challenging them, I think
Hmm.
is a big thing of, and maybe not doing it in an aggressive way or mean way or unprofessional way, but just vocalizing your opinion and curiosity, I think would be a big thing. And I think if you're in the right environment, people would appreciate that if you
Sure.
deliver it in the right way.
Hmm.
So that would be first and foremost. And then secondly, I would probably say is probably just building my network faster of like
Hmm.
understanding the value of really fostering relationships with people, following up, and more importantly, not looking at it in the way of like, oh, Peter is working at a college, he can potentially give me an internship, but hey, what can I do for Peter as well too? Like, how can I help him out? How can I give a lending hand? So always knowing that even though you might feel as like a college student, and I know I felt like this personally, like, hey, I don't have much to add here, I've never worked before like in a corporate setting and stuff, you do have tremendous value to add. Is just figuring out how you can provide that to someone. So asking the question of, okay, what can I be giving this person to make their lives easier, help them out in some way, even though
Hmm.
I am asking for something as well too.
Yeah. Good stuff. I love how you said that about the delivery of it is so important, that we often take for granted. So how you deliver, how you ask the question, how you start the conversation is so important, um, uh, to how you come across. We do have a question. One last question. I thought I had the last question, but we do have a question from the audience for sure. Um, it's almost like a two-part question here. What was the hardest moment in your journey through your career? What made it hard and what helped you overcome it? And were there any mistakes you made on your journey to where you are today? And if so, what did you learn from those mistakes? So yeah, he got like his bang for the buck with those questions, man. He went over the top. So good question there, Ryan. Thanks.
All right, so hardest moment. I guess I'll answer this in two parts. So hardest moment. I think every transition is hard,
Sure.
to be honest. So not only have I transitioned careers, I've transitioned states. So I've
Mm,
lived in 4 different states
mhm,
post
mhm.
college, which has been interesting. And each transition comes with its own challenges
Yeah.
because you're essentially taking yourself from one environment that you're potentially comfortable in into a new one.
Mhm.
And not only is it a new environment in terms of location, but also then you're changing career at the same time.
Sure.
So I think that's been the hardest is each transition. But I think it's just like the gym analogy. The more that I've done it, the easier it has become. But there
Mhm.
is like the second guessing or the doubting it and kind of having to figure out, okay, I'm here now. How do I make the best of it? Is this where I should
Mhm.
be? Is this what I want to be doing? And then how do I continue to grow in this moment that I'm in? So that's probably been the hardest and it's gotten easier over time.
Sure.
And then second part question was,
Mistakes. Any mistakes you made, and what did you learn from them?
oh, lots of mistakes.
Every day,
Every
right?
day. um, so I think the one that I'm working on right now, which I've pretty sure people have heard of before, is to fail faster. So
Mm,
I sometimes analysis paralysis, which I look at a decision that I need to make, overthink it, look at it again, think about
mm,
it again, and that can go on for weeks, if not months, sometimes.
sure.
Versus just saying, "Hey, I'm going to make this decision. It might be the wrong decision, but I'll learn that sooner rather than later. So let me go ahead and
Mhm,
move forward, make the decision, and if it is a mistake, quote unquote, it's not a mistake, it's a learning experience. And how do I
mhm.
grow from it? So if I'm just conscious of knowing that it potentially might not be the right decision, it doesn't become a mistake at that point, but more so a learning experience at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's good. I love that fail fast thing, get it out the way, make the decision, pull the trigger, and what's the worst that's going to happen? You have to reset, take a step back and reset again as well. And I think what happens, it serves you better in the long run because you've been down that path before and you know what works best for your organization under those circumstances. So yeah, thanks for mentioning that for sure. Listen, hey, and thank you so much, Daleele, for being a part of this conversation today, being a part of this College of DuPage Entrepreneurship Club. Those of you who are watching, Daleele is in the Chicagoland area, but actually he's remote with us from Colorado right now. And that's the type of club we're trying to be. We want to make sure that we are reaching people wherever they are. Daleele, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for having me, Peter. Much appreciate it.
Good seeing you again as always, and happy holidays to you and yours. And those of you who are with us today, thank you so much for joining the last episode of the College of DuPage Entrepreneurship Club for the fall of 2020. We look forward to seeing you all in the spring as we hit the reset button. Hopefully, pandemic life is eased just a little bit, and we're getting closer to seeing each other's faces again and starting some great businesses in the near future.